Hello everybody and welcome to today's Crowdfunder Sport Introduction to Crowdfunding webinar. Today we're going to be looking at how to successfully use crowdfunding as a way of fundraising for your sports organisation. We'll also look at the all-important extra funding opportunities available from Sport England. So we've been joined by the wonderful Rebecca Anderson from Sport England, who's going to talk through the 2 pots of money available to eligible projects. We'll spend a bit of time looking at what crowdfunding is and how you can best use this as a way of fundraising effectively for your sports club or organisation. And we'll hear from somebody who's already been there and done that. So Alison Rumble from Tornado's Korfball Club is joining us to talk through her wonderful project that is currently still live. So we'll make sure we share a link to that for you all to check out as well. She's got some brilliant hints and tips on how you can make the most of your crowdfunding journey. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we get started. We have allowed an hour for this session, and that does include a Q&A towards the end. So please do make use of the chat box, which is on the right hand of your screen. You can see there's a few messages from ourselves and going in there at the moment, but please do ask any questions throughout the whole course of the session, and we'll make sure we answer as many of those as we can going through, and we'll loop back to a Q&A at the end with myself, Rebecca and Alison. We are recording this session, but don't worry, you don't feature in the recording. So you can see us, but we can't see any of you. So do feel free to sit there with a cup of tea and enjoy the slides and the content. But we will record the whole session and send it out to you as part of a follow-up email. We'll also make sure we include all of the resource links as well to make sure you've got everything you need to start your crowdfunding journey. Okay, without further ado, we'll get started, and I'd love to introduce Rebecca, please. Rebecca, are you there?
I am, yes. Sorry, just turning on my camera.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you, Zoe?
I'm really well, thank you. So today you're going to talk through the Active Together Fund and the Places and Spaces Fund, so 2 separate pots of money that are available to eligible sports clubs. Would you mind walking us through the 2 different funds, please?
Yeah, of course. So afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Really hope you kind of all make the most of the time and listen to all the fab advice Zoe's going to share with you after this, and ask as many questions as you need. Likewise, as a team here at Sport England, we're also on hand to just help. So just drop us an email if you have any specific campaign related queries. So our first fund is called Active Together. It was launched back in 2020, May time now. It's a 7 million lottery fund. It was originally launched kind of designed to help direction and support community clubs and organisations to recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The funding is about recovery, reinvention, building resilience for organisations. So your project, for example, could be fundraising for just essential maintenance works, which ordinarily you could have covered by your income that was coming in, but obviously that has been lost over the past couple of years, or kind of knocked by lack of fundraising events. Pay for any adjustments needed to accommodate social distancing measures, running a new activity possibly to meet demand post-pandemic, helping your community to recover. And also more recently, we've added in terms of the emerging energy crisis that's obviously affecting lots of sports community organisations. To date, the fund has been incredibly successful. We've supported hundreds of campaigns so far, covering from a huge range of sports and organisations. So we have plenty of budget left. Fundraisers range from kind of a couple of £100 to 70 plus thousand. So any kind of campaign, big or small, it kind of covers a whole range of kind of projects. So don't think it necessarily isn't for you. Our second one is our Place and Spaces Fund, which is a total budget of 7 million of lottery funding. This one is a capital fund, so it's aimed at community sport and physical activity groups looking to create, enhance or redevelop their sports facility. A big focus of the fund is actually it's one of our legacy funds, so it's off the back of the Commonwealth Games that were hosted in Birmingham. We really want to celebrate that and kind of continue that local legacy. So we're looking for campaigns to help unite communities as part of this, kind of creating enhancing facilities to encourage their kind of community to continue to be physically active. A big part of our kind of want to partner with Crowdfunder is their whole kind of wraparound support. one of which being these lovely webinars and kind of the resources they have online to help create and run a successful campaign, whoever you are. So we recognise crowdfunding can be a bit of a new concept in terms of the sport and physical activity sector. So please do utilise all the free support and expertise on offer. So I hope you enjoy the session, and I'll hand back over to Zoe.
Thank you so much. And Rebecca, you're going to stick around, aren't you? And if anyone's got any questions specifically about the fund, we can check back in with you a little bit later. Is that okay?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will talk about crowdfunding with you guys in just a moment. But what I'd really like to do initially is to see what your knowledge of Crowdfunder is before we get started. So I'm going to pop a little poll into the chat box. If you wouldn't mind answering that one for me. I'm just going to ask if any of you have donated to a crowdfunder before. So that poll's going in now. If you could click yes or no, that would be brilliant. And we'll see what your knowledge is like before we get started. Okay, jumping around all over the place, but it's looking like a pretty even split. So we've got 40% of you saying that you haven't and 60% of you saying that you have. That is brilliant news. So we've got a nice mix. What I would like to now ask you is if you have donated to a crowdfunder before, what was your reason? Do you have links to the club itself or the project? Were you drawn by a particular reward that they might have on offer? And we'll talk about rewards in a little bit more depth. Or was it a mixture of the both? So if you wouldn't mind answering that one for me. Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, so it looks as though predominantly those of you that have donated to a crowdfunder before do have links and ties to the project itself in the majority, and then 25% of you are saying both. So you actually were enticed by a reward as well. That's really, really good to hear. So it's great that we've got a mixed bag and we can talk through all of the different aspects of crowdfunding now. What I'd like to look at in the first instance, just going on from what Rebecca was saying about extra funding, is when you do go onto Crowdfund and set up a crowdfunding page with us, you will be asked to fill in a few different stages of putting your page together, and one of them is all about the extra funding available to you. So when you're setting up your page, make sure that you tick this box, as you can see highlighted on the slide here, to allow us to share your details with our extra funding partners. You must also make sure that you've entered your postcode of your club, your organisation, in the basics part of the page. That will allow our wonderful computer system to make sure that we can match you with any of the relevant funding partners, either locally to your club or nationally, such as Sport England, that might want to support you with an extra funding pledge. You'll go on to fill out a few different tick boxes to let us know who you're going to be working with. So the beneficiaries of your project, whether that's going to be young people, old people, you know, chances are it's a cross section of your community. And then you're also going to let us know the possible and potential outcomes of your project happening as well. So the delivery of your project, what's going to be that community impact? For the majority of you here, it's going to be increasing people's physical activity, but it could also be tackling, you know, isolation, ill mental health, all of these wonderful ripple effects that kind of go out from sports organisations into the local community. It can be really impactful. So make sure that you're letting us know who's going to benefit and how they're going to benefit, and we can make sure that we're matching you with those relevant funders. You will find in most instances that you get matched with more than one funding partner. Please do make sure you're putting in applications for all of the funds that you think are a good fit for yourself. So all of you here will be thinking about the Sport England funds and hoping to tap into those pots of money available, but you may well have been matched with the local authority, for example, as well. So do make sure you put in those multiple applications. It's about a 10 to 15 minute application process per fund. It's always a good idea to have your answers kind of pre-saved on a separate document so you can copy and paste that over if you're filling in multiple applications, because you can receive money from different funding partners. You can receive multiple pots of extra funding towards your project, obviously increasing that raise towards your target. Okay, the way in which the extra funding works in regards to the Sport England pledges is that you'd put in an application. So you'd start setting up your project, you'd fill in all of the relevant information, you'd get your project to a stage where you're really happy with it and ready for it to go live. So it's going to be really engaging, and we'll go through how to put a good page together in a moment. But you want to be confident that you're happy to put this page out into the world, to your community, to engage with your supporters. So it's going to be highly visual. It's going to have all of the information that you want to tell your story as your club. You're then going to put in that application and hopefully get approval in the first instance from Sport England. If they really like your project, but they think it might need a little bit more work in terms of the project page and the campaign, they may well decline your application. However, they will send you through an improvement guide, giving you all of the advice and the resources needed to really make those amendments to the page and ask for a re-review. Sport England and Crowdfunder are really keen to see your projects be a success and obviously get that approval wherever they can. So please do make note of those improvement guides, action all of those different improvements needed, and then ask them to look at the project again. You then go on to launch your crowdfunding project once you've received that approval. And once you've raised 25% of your initial target by a required amount of supporters, and you can see in the table at the bottom of this slide here what those required supported numbers look like versus your initial target amount. So if you wanted to raise up to £5,000, you'd need to raise 25% of that via 25 unique supporters. And a unique supporter is somebody with a unique banking footprint and an individual email address. So, for example, if you had a couple that had a shared bank account and both of them donated to your project, only one of those would count as a unique supporter towards your extra funding milestones. So make sure you're really reaching out and bringing in lots of individual supporters to your page. Once you've hit that first milestone, the extra funding pledge from Sport England will land on your page, and you'll see that as part of your target raised as well. It's a really exciting time because suddenly your target progress bar leaps up with that wonderful pledge from Sport England, and you're so much closer to reaching your goal. You then need to go back out and continue crowdfunding. So you'd use the Sport England pledge as a catalyst for momentum. You'd go back out to your supporters, shout about the fact that this wonderful pledge has arrived on your page, and now you need to aim to hit your initial target and secure your extra funding pledge by making sure you reach 100% of your initial target. If your project is still live at that point and you have a little bit of time left, do continue to crowdfund. You can set something we call a stretch target, which allows you to overfund your project and raise money beyond your initial target. So do bear that in mind when putting your page together. That stretch target you can increase at any point as well. So if you've got a nice amount of time left on your crowdfunder, do continue going back out and rallying the support and bringing in those pledges as well. Okay. So Crowdfunder UK is actually the UK's leading rewards-based crowdfunding platform. So I imagine many of you are familiar with some of the other crowdfunding platforms out there, such as Just Giving or GoFundMe. We set ourselves aside from all of those different platforms by offering something which is unique to us, which is allowing and enabling project owners to add rewards to their projects and their campaigns. A reward is a benefit of some kind in return for your supporters' financial contribution. And that can take many forms, and we'll look at it in a little bit more detail further on, but it enables you to give something back to your community. You will be thinking probably about what's of use to maybe your club members. So coaching, for example, one-to-one coaching, or maybe you've got events coming up that you want to have ticketed and you can sell the tickets via the crowdfunder. But when you are sourcing rewards, try to think about your wider community as well, and how are you going to incentivize their giving? Speak to different organizations that you have relationships with and see if they might be able to offer you rewards to put on your page, which will actually entice and incentivize the support from the wider community, not just your club members. And that can be a task in itself, but it's really worth doing because it develops great partnerships going forward. Just move myself out of the way here, bear with me 2 seconds. So to date, Crowdfunder UK, and we're going to be turning 10 next year, has raised over £274 million for the projects that have come through our platform. So it's huge numbers and huge amounts of people that are successfully crowdfunding. It might be slightly alien to some of you here today as a form of fundraising, but this is really just to kind of cement in your knowledge that it's a very successful way of being able to not only raise the money needed, but really put your club at the center of your community and raise awareness about who you are and what you're doing and why it's so important that you deliver the project that you're raising money for. So we see up to 300 projects daily adding to our platform, and that can be anything and everything from charities through to community interest companies, political campaigns, individual fundraising, and of course sports. And sports does crowdfund really, really well. And as Rebecca mentioned at the beginning as well, we are seeing a shift with a lot of sports clubs that are using this as their primary focus for fundraising now because they've had such success with it. As sports clubs are naturally competitive, they do crowdfund really well. Just tasking people with the idea of going out there and rallying support comes, I think, naturally to sports organisations. We do as well have a multiplier option, which I'll go through, which enables people to fundraise on behalf of the club. That can be a really exciting way to boost the fundraising as well. But ultimately, sports clubs are normally at the heart of every community. So it's a brilliant way to, as I said, raise awareness of who you are and what you're doing, bring new club members to the organisation, bring new community members and community organisations maybe in to use the facilities, build those partnerships and build those lovely relationships going forward with segments of the community that you might not already have existing relationships with, and just enhance and secure those ones that you already do. It's a really lovely exercise in, of course, fundraising, but promotion, building advocates and awareness as well. And I'm sure that when we speak to Alison, she'll have some more kind of information for you guys on how that's impacted her club as well. So why do people pledge? We covered that a little bit in our poll, and you guys really did demonstrate that actually it's a blend between people believing in the idea. So they might have personal links with the club and they really want to see it happen, you know, the project happen. Or they also, there's going to be a portion of your network that love the rewards that you have on offer because you've really thought about what's going to be enticing not only to your existing club members, but also to your wider community as a whole. So the idea is to strike that balance between the two. Tell your story in a really engaging way. Make sure that you're speaking to your club members as much as you are to your wider community when you're telling your story. And you might have to think about how you do that on your page. It might be slightly different narratives when it comes to promotion as well, in terms of how you're getting that message across to your crowd, to your community, and then that wonderful selection of rewards as well. This is an example page that we've put together for you. So this is how you would go about telling your story. So when you're thinking about crowdfunding, you'd sign up onto our platform and you'd be prompted to put your page together. We will make sure that you have all of the resources on hand to do that effectively. One of which is specifically for sports clubs that are coming through and signing up as a sports organisation. We have templated your page for you. So we know that it works really well to have clear headings, lovely concise information split into paragraphs with bold text to highlight any really important information, and lots of visuals as well. So you can see here on the slide that we've got some generic kind of prompts in terms of headlines. Do feel free to change these, but try and keep the theme and the message going forward, telling your story in this format. So we want to know who you are as a club. Why are you important to your community? So what's your community impact? You're going to fill these sections with lots of lovely visuals and images to kind of showcase that and evidence that, where you've had community days or, you know, different pictures of the youth team and the senior team coming together, all these wonderful things that you already do, you're going to bring together onto your page to showcase why you're so important to your local community and why they need to get behind you to help you raise the money that you need in order to make that project happen. By using the formatted template that we have in place for you, that will also help your application to Sport England. They know what works when it comes to raising money for sports clubs. The clubs that are going to get approval that first time round without any improvement guides are going to be the ones that follow this format, that have really engaging content on their page, that are going to have a short little video at the top, which is going to hook everybody in. And that's going to have a really lovely range of rewards as well. So if you bear those things in mind when putting your page together and you're going for that approval from Sport England, that is going to give you the best chance of success in order for approval. Here are just some examples of some of the inventive rewards that we've seen sports clubs offer. And you'll see there's a real variety here. There's going to be things that have a real appeal to your club members. And as I mentioned, that's going to be maybe one-to-one coaching or discounted membership, for example. But then you'll see here there's a fish and chips voucher. So they've obviously gone out to the local high street fish and chip shop and they have been gifted with a voucher for money off the next fish and chip tea. And then you've got everything. We've got here a bunny boarding at a bunny hotel. Seems really bizarre, but somebody may well need that. And it's a lovely, interesting thing to talk about in your social media promotion as well. So if you can go out to local businesses, local members of your network and your community, and source a wide variety of different rewards that you can then talk about these wonderful businesses as part of your varied content and promotion who are supporting you, and they in turn will go out and shout about the fact that they've done something lovely and they're supporting your crowdfunder, and everybody should go and look at your crowdfunder and donate and support. So not only is it helping you with the rewards, it's helping you have cross promotion, and it's a win-win situation for you and those businesses that are supporting you. You could think at the moment as well about not only kind of products and services that might seem like a luxury item, but at the moment with the kind of cost of living crisis looming, things that are an everyday service. So we find that clubs will have members of the organisation, so maybe the youth team doing gardening or gardens clearing or odd jobs and things like that for a set price as a reward. We've even had accounting services, and we've even had a local garage who's gifted an MOT, and obviously everybody needs that at some point. So think creatively about what would work for your club members and beyond, so that wider community as well. I'm going to move myself back up to the top actually to get myself out of the way here. I mentioned about multiplying your crowdfunder. This can be a really brilliant thing to do as a sports club. As I mentioned, you're all going to be naturally competitive, and the chances are you've got different teams that you can maybe pit against each other, or you might want to actually have a fundraising challenge that you set to all club members, and maybe you could even have a prize for the person who brings in the most supporter numbers, or who fundraises the most amount of money, for example. It's a great thing to do as well if you might be thinking of holding an event during the course of the crowdfunder. Could you have a crowdfunding event where something specific happens on that day? Our example of this is the Brixton BMX track, where all of the members were actually set to task to cycle a set amount of laps around the track. So they would all set up their individual fundraising pages, and you can see here they had 23 individual fundraisers, and all of those individual fundraising pages that had been created, so there's 23, the people responsible for those would go out to their own networks, generate their own supporters and their own pledges, and all of that would not only show on their individual pages, as you can see here for Jacob, Milo, Nicola and Benedict, that's their fundraising pages, but that would all go and show on the main project page as well. So it's a brilliant way to get you to that first milestone with unique supporters and beyond. And of course, all that money goes into your target raise as well. You can also opt for them to share your rewards if you so wish, so everybody can claim those rewards even through those individual fundraisers. We've got some brilliant resources available to you, as Rebecca mentioned. So we run webinars like this each month. We also have weekly drop-in sessions. So if you have any questions regarding your specific campaign or about the funds, you can always book onto one of those free online sessions. Come along, speak to a crowdfunding expert in person, hear about other projects' experiences as well. You might actually find you develop, again, some peer-to-peer support relationships. We've had some wonderful collaborations started in those sessions. So do feel free to come along to those and make use of our Crowdfunder Sports Learn platform, We have free online educational resources. It's a little course with 4 different sections. You've got an introduction to crowdfunding, and then you have the planning, creating and running your crowdfunding campaign as well. I always recommend that you work your way through that before you launch or think about putting your campaign together, because it really does give you all of the key information that you need in order to put your campaign together and run a successful crowdfunding campaign. We'll make sure we share the links to all of these, not only in the chat box, but as part of that follow-up email. So you'll have all of the resources you need in order to get your journey started. But somebody who has been on that journey and done an incredibly good job of it so far and is still actually live, so she's in the throes of it at the moment, is Alison Rumble from Tornadoes Korfball Club. And I'd love to introduce Alison to you all now and see if we can hear a little bit more about her experience. Hi, Alison.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And I'm hoping you're going to be able to enlighten me a little bit, because I imagine there's maybe a few people on this session today, as well as myself, that aren't that familiar with korfball. So would you mind giving us a bit of a brief overview of the sport?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So basically, it's many people say it's a blend between basketball and netball. And so you've got 4 boys and 4 girls on each team. It can be played as young as kind of walking age, so 2 or 3 they start. And I think our oldest club member is in his early 70s now. So yeah, it's a great sport. It's been going since 1901. It's huge in the Netherlands, huge in Belgium, fairly large in the rest of Europe, and growing in the UK, particularly growing in universities.
Okay, amazing. And what's the kind of principle of it? So I can see there we've got the net. So is it a real blend, as you say before, between basketball and netball, kind of a net-based sport, accessible to everybody, it sounds like?
Totally.
So we need to be seeing more korfball clubs.
Absolutely. It's our dream, completely. So you've got a very high, it's about 3.5 meters high hoop, and you can shoot from the front and the back. So it's a bit different to netball and basketball. You can't dribble the ball, and boys mark boys, girls mark girls. So it all works really well as a whole team sport. And yeah, it's really inclusive. Yeah, I personally started playing about 30 years ago. And there's now probably in the UK, there's 3rd generation korfballers. Yeah, it's a real family sport. It's awesome.
I love it. So everybody on the call today, go and check out and see if you've got a local korfball club.
Absolutely.
Maybe go and see what it's all about. And look at Alison's project as well, because obviously there's links there, isn't there, to more information about you guys. So you are currently live with your crowdfunding campaign. It's kind of drawing to a close soon, but you've done really well. You're into your stretch target already, aren't you? So you're carrying on fundraising. You've had support from Sport England. What was it that drew you towards crowdfunding? Why did you think we need to crowdfund, and what are you crowdfunding for?
Okay, so I actually, it's the first time we've ever done it. I wasn't aware of the page. I wasn't aware of the concept. I actually called Sport England because as a club, we came out of COVID thinking our numbers would slowly but surely increase back to where we were, but unfortunately they didn't. Now we lost probably about 35% of our membership through COVID. And korfball was one of the late return to play sports. And we found that people have actually started other sports and just either have stopped sports altogether or moved to something different. So it's really hit us hard, and we've got the same fixed costs, in fact, increasing fixed costs. So membership has become a really big priority for us. So yeah, I called Sport England to find out how we could support the members that were still there and under financial strain. We are in quite an economically challenged area as well. And we also needed to find ways of reaching out to the community and getting new people engaged in the sport. So Sport England told me about Crowdfunder, and we went on and had a look. And it really felt like the perfect thing for us as a sports club. And I think you rightly said at the beginning that sports people are naturally competitive. And it seemed like this was something we could come together as a team of people that were already there and really make a difference. Now, what we then did is we kind of then had a look to see what 3 key priorities we wanted to fix. And again, Crowdfunder seemed to work in all those areas. It was a simple platform. It was something that was going to enable us to be able to reach out to people, share our story, explain what we were going to spend the money on, and look to see if we were going to do banners and flyers and support hall fees and support our social media campaign, bring some new kit and equipment, pay the coaches for coming to coach. And one of our big aspirations is to make sure we could afford to keep subs flat. When you're losing members, to be able to keep subs flat was going to be a real tough one. But with the current economic climate, we really needed to make sure we could do that. So yeah, they were all the reasons we decided crowdfunding was the perfect option for us.
Amazing. And look, you have done incredibly well, as I mentioned. And so obviously you've got that financial need, and that's going to be the primary reason for coming and using the platform. But have you noticed throughout the course of running your crowdfunder that there has been additional benefits, maybe just that awareness to a wider group of people about yourselves and Korfball, or maybe there's been increased interest in joining in the sport? Has anything like that kind of developed over the last kind of few weeks since you've launched?
It has. We've found that we've had an excuse to talk about Korfball. We all love talking about it, but to actually have a platform to go and do it. And it's also really built our credibility as well. I think by having Crowdfunder and Sport England on all our social media, we've been able to really go out there and show that we are a professional image club. We have a focused approach. We're not just scattergunning, why we're going to raise money and we're just going to spend it on anything. We're being really focused and determined about this is how much we need and this is where it's going to go. So yeah, it definitely has given us other opportunities.
Amazing. And I think, as you mentioned, it's almost like having that transparency as a club. You're kind of putting it all out there, aren't you? So you're letting people know what you're doing, how it's impacting those around you in terms of your community, but then people can find out quite easily a lot about you and build awareness about what you're doing, which is great. Would you find that you've had moments where you found certain things quite easy, or has there been anything that's been quite challenging? Like, what advice might you be able to give in terms of things that maybe you felt were a bit of a hurdle, or things that you thought, right, we've nailed this, we definitely know how to do this?
Well, I think as we were building the site, I think being concise was one of our challenges. And I think making sure that we'd got the right level of information on there to maintain people's engagement levels, and then making sure we're doing the updates, regular updates. Sport England, again, have been amazing at just dropping us notes as, maybe it would be a good idea to pop an update on there now, and maybe this would be a good idea, or tag these people. So we've had a lot of support there. So it's really focused our minds and it's helped us develop a clear club strategy. One of the things I think worked particularly well is that we've done a couple of great bingo nights of all things, and we've actually channeled the sales of the tickets through the platform, and that's worked well because people have wanted to come to the evenings, have naturally had to go onto the platform to buy the tickets and to buy the raffle tickets, and that's meant that they've then had a look at our other rewards and potentially bought into those as well. So giving people a real reason that they really did need to visit the site, rather than just it would be a good idea you have to come to this event. That's worked well. And I'd say if I had to give advice for anybody doing it, I would say maybe have no more than 3 priorities. Maybe make sure that everything that you're doing aligns with these 3 priorities. And something that I probably regret doing that I would do next time was have more of a calendar of how I was going to update my platform, to make sure that I knew what events were happening when. If I was doing prize draws, that I had them trickled through the duration of the platform as well, rather than I've got 3 prize draws finishing on Saturday. It maybe would have been a good idea to have done them at different stages. And I would really encourage anybody to sell any event tickets through Crowdfunder. As I said, that's how you're going to get extra traffic.
Yeah, definitely. And I imagine everybody's got fixtures coming up, and even if it's a case of the fixtures are free but you have food and drink on offer, is there a way somebody could have a food and drink voucher for that particular fixture?
Yeah,
anything you can funnel to actually capture the donation versus it going over maybe the club bar is a great way of boosting just those small little donations. It soon amasses, doesn't it, to a much bigger amount of money.
Yeah.
What advice then would you give? And I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that you may well come back and crowdfund again. Have you found that it's been a good way for you to fundraise? Maybe you'd consider that?
Definitely.
Oh, that's really good to hear. So on that basis, what would you advise people that are thinking about doing it for the first time?
Golly, I think I would say just really make sure you know where you're going to get your rewards from. I would have all of that lined up before you really try and go live. So do a lot of planning beforehand. I mean, for us to find the rewards, I certainly found that we had stuff as a club we could give. You've already used the example of, having maybe a kit. You could give a t-shirt, you could have a ball, you could have a shirt, you could, your members as well are a great source of links to businesses, like you said, and then the wider community. So I would make sure that I knew where my rewards were coming from. And then I think also then if you're looking for sponsorship, that for me was another big thing, that because we had Sport England support, we could go out to local businesses and share sponsorship packages. And that was, I would say, that was one of our big wins. So out of the money that we've raised, a chunk of it came from sponsorship. And yeah, that was really built on the credibility that we had by being able to exhibit ourselves in the way we did, have the videos on there that we had the photographs of the club. It really brought us alive.
Yeah, that's really, really great to hear. And it is very much a kind of shop window, for want of a better way of describing it, into a club and into the sport itself. I'm a complete, I know nothing about Korfball, but I feel like I know the basics now, because I've seen your video, I've seen the page, I've read all about it. And it was new to me, but I've been telling lots of people about this amazing sport that I've just learned about. So, you're building kind of advocates for the sport as a whole, not only the club, which is really lovely. Would you, in terms of that kind of the next stage of your journey, so you're live at the moment, is there anything that you've noticed in terms of maybe a drop off in the middle when it comes to the pledges? One thing that we often see is that everyone gets excited because you're rallying your crowd around you at the beginning, and then maybe it does kind of, stall a little bit, if you like, in the middle, and then it all ramps up again. You're kind of at the kind of tail end of that stage. Have you noticed that you've had to be more reactive in recent kind of days or weeks to kind of keep that momentum up? And is it starting to pick up again?
Yeah, so I think the analytics side of Crowdfunder, where you can see how many pledges you've had, you can see how many hits you've got, you can see where they're coming from. You've got some great graphs there as well to be able to really show what you're doing and how it's working. So, for example, when we put some things out on stories on Instagram, we see a peak. So as soon as you stop doing that, you start to see it drop off again, and you can see what your conversion rates are. So all the analytical data behind it really does help you do the right thing. And I think, again, we would do things differently next time because you start to understand what is really working for you. And yeah, I mean, even with the prize draws that I mentioned that are finishing this Saturday, the prizes are amazing. So, that's another reason to get out there and talk about it. So we're using WhatsApp groups to share the stories. We're using Facebook, Instagram. We're not on Twitter. I think we probably realised that we need to be on Twitter as well. So that'll change the shape of how we promote ourselves. But yeah, I think all I'd say is just make sure you're using the analytics behind as well to make the right decisions.
Amazing, thank you. And so that's what Alison's referring to there, is your live project dashboard. So you have a dashboard that you can access throughout the whole duration of your crowdfunding campaign. It allows you to post updates, as you mentioned, to your supporters, which will show on your page as well as being sent out to them, which is a lovely way to keep them in the loop, and something that Sport England really encourage projects to do. You'll also be able to see how much money you're trending towards raising, your conversion rates, as you mentioned, and you can manage all aspects of your project from there. You can, extend your project, download supporter details if applicable, all those kind of things.
And so actually, really one thing to say on that as well is it's good that it doesn't just have to be operated on the desktop. So I've found if I've been at an event and I want to take a photograph of the event and put it in an update straight away, I can do it on my phone. And yeah, that's been really handy.
Yeah, it's really, really versatile, really user-friendly, isn't it? And I think if people kind of make use of that, they soon realise actually there's a lot that can be done from that dashboard. And of course, applying for that extra funding, you can do that via your project dashboard as well. Thank you so much, Alison. Really, really brilliant information. And I'm sure inspiring a lot of people here to kind of go and sign up and start that journey. I'd just like to welcome Rebecca back, if possible, and we can see if there's any questions that have come through for either of you. Okay, so one that's come through for you actually, Alison, that says, "Hi Alison, this is from Lucy. How did you find selling the crowdfunding idea to your committee as a route to take?" So I guess as a route to fundraising.
Do you know, it's totally, well, really easy. I think just taking them onto the page to show them the success other clubs have had sells itself. And there's kind of nothing really to be lost. I think it was also difficult to make sure we came up with the right target at the beginning, because, you know, you don't want to come up with too high a target and then not quite get there and then not get your funding from Sport England. So we had to be sensible about how much we went to. And there comes a point after you've launched that you can't change it anymore, so you've got to stick with your original target. So you all have to come together and make sure you're being realistic, not over ambitious. But yeah, there's no reason why anybody should be against it, because there's only good to come from it, really.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And you're right, planning to kind of have almost the minimum that you need to make that project happen, and then you can always overfund. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have that stretch target in place, so it doesn't have to be the end of your fundraising once you hit that target. So think and plan about those target amounts in the first instance before obviously putting those pages together. So this one is for you, Rebecca, from Simon. Can applications run in parallel? So I imagine if they want to apply for a few different things, can they be setting up multiple pages and applying for possibly different funds, or, you know, similar for the same project?
In terms of crowdfunding, we'd probably recommend you consolidate it into the one page, particularly if it's kind of lots of individual campaigns from one club or organisation, purely because you kind of lose the impact and kind of draw from your crowd. We've had several campaigns come in and do another campaign after kind of a year of being successful, which we absolutely can fund again. In terms of kind of, if you're referring to other Sport England funds, that's also fine. You can come in for something else. We can't kind of duplicate funding, so we can't fund something that's exactly the same as what you're running in a campaign. But yeah, you can run campaigns. What I would say, yeah, consolidate the campaign just because it's a bit more impactful, basically. And if anything, for example, we've sometimes had kind of like a junior section and a senior section come in and they run kind of independently, but actually if they come together and kind of pool their resources, then they've had a far more successful campaign. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think from a crowdfunding standpoint as well, it can be quite a lot of work to run a crowdfunder. I think, Alison, you'd attest to this as well. So actually bringing it all together and kind of keeping everything in the same pot is probably a bit easier in terms of, you know, running the crowdfunder. And also you want to think about your networks. And if you're running two separate campaigns, but your crowd is the same people, you're almost dividing their interests. Whereas if you're consolidating it all, reaching out to one crowd, and then if you need to crowdfund again, and we do have people, don't we, come back time and time again, give enough of a break to give yourself a bit of rest and also to avoid kind of crowd fatigue, give them a bit of a breather. So yeah, 6 months to 12 months maybe before you come back and launch again. This one's coming from Simon. So Rebecca, you mentioned up to 70k on the Active Spaces Fund. I think there was a bit of a miscommunication there. I think you were referring to projects that had a large target, so they were raising around 70k. Just wanting to clarify about the limits of the funding, so that £10,000 limit towards a project. Would you be able to just go over that a little bit? Again,
yeah, sorry. So I was kind of referring to kind of the whole range of kind of campaigns we've come in. So the maximum I think we've had is kind of just over £70,000 raised. So in terms of our contributions, our match funding, so we match fund up to between 30 and 50% of a raise up to £10,000. So for example, if your campaign target is £20,000, our maximum pledge towards that will be £10,000, depending on if you meet certain priorities of kind of what we set out and depending on where you are IMD wise. And if there's any specifics you kind of want to speak to us about, we can certainly kind of let you know. But yeah, maximum our contribution wise across both funds, Active Together and Placing Spaces, would be £10,000.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think it's probably worth clarifying as well at the moment that in terms of the types of clubs that you're looking for, it's going to be not-for-profit organisations, isn't it, as opposed to profit-making clubs. Wonderful, thank you. This one again from for you, Rebecca, from Rudy. Do you have to be affiliated to an NGB to access the funds?
Yes, so Yeah, so basically you do need to be affiliated to an NGB or affiliated to kind of a governing body as such, particularly in terms of, we understand some kind of martial arts or kind of combat sports aren't necessarily affiliated to kind of the specific list of NGBs kind of we associate with. But as long as you kind of have that, in terms of our perspective, it's just having that insurance and kind of safety and government aspect, so we can kind of overcome that with you. So just drop us an email. But ultimately, yeah, we encourage a whole host of sports to apply. I think we've had from kind of gliding to football, so and sub-aqua we've had in Korfball, yeah. So yeah, more the merrier.
Amazing. This one's, again, quite a specific one. There is the email address as well for Sport England if people want to contact specifically the Sport England team if they've got any real specific questions. But so this one we'll just ask from Frank. Can crowdfunding be used to act as match funding, I guess, towards FA grant programs, notably the Football Stadia Improvement Fund, now called the Premier League Stadium Fund?
Yeah, so we've had lots of projects come in and they've had kind of additional funding to go towards a wider project. Obviously, if it's the campaign itself, we are match fund. So basically, if you've got all the funding if you need for your project entirely, then we wouldn't necessarily prioritise it as a need for us to contribute match funding. However, if you're fundraising for a bit of a shortfall of your project, which we see on a regular basis, we absolutely can match fund something that's going towards a wider project, which you've also gained funding from elsewhere. Like Zoe said earlier, we encourage organisations to look at extra funding options as well across the crowdfunding page. Several of the other NGBs are looking into it or have already got extra funding live at the minute. Lots of local authorities, kind of big commercial partners now. So if anything, you can kind of leverage that funding for a wider project.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca. There's a few questions that are in this box I think we've kind of covered in terms of how much would be pledged towards a particular project raise, and you've covered that nicely with the up to £10,000 and up to 50% of a potential target. Okay. What is the best way to start and register, Ben? Well, you will be given the links to register and to sign up. I'll also make sure when we finish this Q&A, our last slide of the day will be the next steps slide. So you will have on the screen all the links that you need, as well as hopefully in the chat box. My wonderful colleague is in the wings putting in different links for you, and we'll also include it into the follow-up email. One thing I would suggest as well is going and having a look at the Sport England extra funding page, and at the bottom of that you'll see all of the different clubs that have already been supported by them. So take a look through the different clubs that are a similar sport to yourselves, look how they've put their pages together, get inspiration from their rewards, click through to their social media platforms, see how they've been promoting it, get an idea of what's involved and get some inspiration. And obviously signing up to the crowdfunding platform is ultimately the way that you're going to get started. Okay, so in terms of what's the recommendation for the length of time set for fundraising? So in terms of running a crowdfunding campaign, it's a short, sharp injection of fundraising. So we always recommend around the 4 to 5 week mark is optimum. As we spoke about with Alison, you will naturally see a bit of a dip in pledges in the middle kind of section of your crowdfunding campaign when it's live. So it's brilliant to be able to be reactive to that. But also, if it's a short amount of time, that's more possible. You know, you can keep up that momentum. You can keep your kind of crowd invested in the campaign for the duration of that 4 to 5 weeks. If you run it for much longer than that, unless you've got a real solid plan of promotion, or maybe there are events happening that you're going to capture as part of the fundraising exercise, then what you do is maybe run the risk of just increasing that lull period in the middle. A good piece of advice would be to try and run your crowdfunder over 2 consecutive paydays if possible, or if you've got specific fixtures coming up within your sporting calendar, use those as part of the crowdfunding campaign. You might have one at the beginning where you're going to launch the crowdfunder, make a big song and dance about the fact that you're launching, You might even have a really important home game towards the end of the crowdfunder that you want to include as well as that kind of fundraising opportunity. So think about your sporting calendars, think about the deadlines that you might have to deliver this project, but really you want to be thinking 4 to 5 weeks is a good amount of time to be able to effectively run your campaign. Okay, and I think, just scrolling back down here, we've got, as I mentioned, we've had a few kind of specific questions, which I will capture, and maybe we can kind of reply to those, Rebecca, outside of this session. Yep. But I think in terms of questions kind of covering Crowdfunder and Sport England funding as a whole, I think that'd be a really good place to wrap it up for today. So thank you so much, Rebecca and Alison, for joining me today, and for everybody that's attended. I'm really hoping that you're going to have all of the information now that you need to really get those crowdfunding campaigns underway. I would like to just run a last poll just to see how you're all feeling before I put that last slide up for you. So just let us know if you're now feeling confident to start your crowdfunding campaign. Let's give it a moment to do its little dance. Okay, so the majority of you are saying yes. There are a few of you that are wanting a little bit more information as well. So the next steps for you all are going to be to explore other campaigns, work your way through that Learn platform that we're going to send you the links to, pop along to any of our drop-ins as well if you've got any specific questions, or contact Sport England if you've got questions about how your club might fit in with their fund criteria and eligibility. But ultimately, ourselves at Crowdfunder and Sport England are on hand to help you, walk you through the process and make sure you're getting that approval if your club is eligible. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you again, Rebecca and Alison. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.